Mark Savage with that report. Do stay with us here on BBC News.
Live from London, this is BBC News. Joe Biden tells the American public he dropped out of the US presidential race to save democracy.
Is to pass the torch to a new generation. That's the best way to unite our nation.
It comes as one of the most powerful members of the Democratic Party publicly endorses Kamala Harris.
In the UK, police suspend an officer after a video emerged showing a policeman kicking and stamping on a man as he lay on the floor at Manchester Airport. Hello and welcome to today's Verified Live. Joe Biden has told the American public he quit the US presidential race to save democracy. He said it's time to pass the torch to a new generation. The president was speaking in a televised address from the Oval Office to explain why he'd abandoned his attempts to get re-elected to the White House, paving the way for his vice president, Kamala Harris, to take on Donald Trump in November's election. This report from Will Grant in Washington. Well, around the world and across the UK, you're watching BBC News. You're watching BBC News. Let's bring you more on that developing story here in the UK as policing is under the spotlight today after a video emerged showing an officer kicking and stamping on a man's head as he lay on the floor at Manchester Airport. The city's police force has removed one of its officers from all duties while it reviews what happened, and the police watchdog is carrying out its own investigation. Now you're watching BBC News. It is creeping past 25 minutes past 3. Let's turn to the Olympics because it's 100 years since Paris last staged the Summer Olympics, and while competition in football, rugby sevens, archery and handball are already underway, the official opening of the Games is a little over 24 hours away. We'll have extensive coverage over the next few weeks, and it kicks off right now because we can cross live to our team in the French capital and join Mariam Mashiri, who's there. Mariam, over to you.
Matthew, thank you. Very warm welcome to Paris, one of the most beautiful cities in the world and host to the 33rd Summer Olympic and Paralympic Games. Now, this event, Matthew, will be the biggest event ever organised in France, a plan that has been brought to life from the moment Paris was awarded the Games all the way back in 2017. More Olympic coverage in a few moments from me.
Welcome back to Verified Live. Coming up here in the next few minutes, we're going to have a special report from the front lines on the Ukraine war. We'll also get the latest on that landslides in Ethiopia with 250 bodies now having been retrieved. And we'll have the latest on that police story here in the UK in Manchester. All of that is coming up in the next half hour here. But let us squeeze in the sports headlines of the day. Tanya Arnold is patiently waiting. Tanya, good afternoon.
Matthew, thanks very much indeed. Andy Murray admits he ran out of time after announcing he's withdrawing from the singles event at the Paris Olympics. Certainly an interesting line of questioning. Back to you, Matthew.
Tanya, thanks very much. Before we move on, an update on that story that we were covering here on the programme a short while ago, that police officer who has been suspended from Greater Manchester Police after that disturbing video that was published showing an officer kicking and then stamping on a man's head. Well, Ahmed Yaqub is a solicitor representing two of the men involved in that incident, and he spoke in Rochdale just a short time ago. who have just said that they have shared CCTV footage of the incident with Greater Manchester Police. They make the point they won't be sharing it with the media because this is an active police investigation. But the airport saying their CCTV footage has been passed to Greater Manchester Police. Around the world and across the UK, you're watching BBC News. You're watching Verified Live here on BBC News. Let's turn to Ethiopia because heavy rain is again hampering the search operations after those devastating landslides in the remote part of southern Ethiopia. More than 250 bodies have now been retrieved from the affected area to the southwest of Addis Ababa. But the UN has warned that the number of dead could double. Some 14,000 people are in urgent need of evacuation because of the risk of further landslides. Well, Kalkadan Yibatal has sent this report. Mariam, thanks very much. Mariam Mashiri there for us in Paris. Do head to the website. There is a lot of material in the build-up to that opening ceremony. Mariam with her team with the very latest there. I have all the latest headlines from Washington, those developments in Rochdale and Manchester here in the UK, that police story that is really developing and making headlines. So much more on all of our main stories here on Verified Live in just a moment or two. Don't go away. Live from London, this is BBC News. A lawyer for several men involved in an incident with police at Manchester Airport on Tuesday says that one of them has developed a cyst on the brain.
The police watchdog the IOPC are investigating. We'll have the latest from here in Rochdale.
Joe Biden tells the American public he dropped out of the US presidential race to save democracy.
Is to pass the torch to a new generation. That's the best way to unite our nation.
I'm Mariam Mashiri in Paris, where the City of Love is gearing up to become the City of Sport. With the start of the Olympic Games, excitement is building, security is tight. I'll have the very latest ahead of tomorrow's opening ceremony.
Hello and welcome to BBC News and welcome to Verified Live. We start here in the UK and that developing story because policing is under the spotlight after a video emerged of an officer kicking and stamping on a man's head as he lay on the floor at Manchester Airport. Just a warning that some people may find the pictures we're about to show you of that incident distressing. Well, that was Nomi Iqbal in Washington. As soon as we get pictures from the White House of that meeting of Joe Biden and Israel's Prime Minister, we'll show you those pictures and any comments they make in those early exchanges. That is expected, we think, in about an hour, hour and a half. Around the world and across the UK, you're watching BBC News. You're watching BBC News. Let's turn to Ukraine because Ukraine's Air Force says it shot down dozens of Russian drones during a second wave of attacks in as many days, targeting ports in the southern region of Odessa. The latest strikes come amid a virtual stalemate in the wider war, with Russia making very limited gains in small pockets in the east. Well, drones have changed the way this war is being fought, and Quentin Somerville, our correspondent, and camera journalist Darren Conway have been with one Ukrainian drone unit on the front lines. Now here on the programme, let's turn to the Olympics because it's 100 years since Paris last staged the Summer Olympics, and while competition in the football, the rugby sevens, archery and handball are already underway, the official opening of the Games is a little over 24 hours away. We will have extensive coverage of that and the next few weeks, but let's head back to Paris now and rejoin Mariam Mashiri there. Mariam, over to you.
Matthew, welcome to Paris, one of the most beautiful cities in the world. And you can see behind me the beautiful Eiffel Tower looking majestic in the daytime. It is host to the 33rd Summer Olympics and Paralympics. And this event is going to be, well, one of the biggest events ever organised in France. A plan that has been brought to life from the moment Paris was awarded the Games in 2017. From Paris for you throughout the day. Back to you, Matthew.
Mariam, thanks once again. We'll get more from Mariam later in the programme. Much more coverage too on the website. We're going to pause. We'll catch up with the latest headlines here and have all the business news coming up in a moment or two. Don't go away.
Calm returns to Wall Street, a subdued start to US trading after Wednesday's multi-trillion-dollar sell-off led by big tech. Helping restore some of that confidence, better than expected news on the US economy. GDP growth surged in the 3 months to June. It eases fears of a hard landing. And the winds of change. The UK's new state-run firm, Great British Energy, announces its first project to cut reliance on fossil fuels and, it hopes, bring down bills. Hello, this is Business Today. Now, there is a collective sigh of relief across Wall Street this Thursday. Calm finally returning to markets and a pretty subdued start to the trading day there. All of this after a pretty brutal sell-off in big tech shares, the so-called Magnificent Seven. That turned into a market glut on Wednesday. Now, that wiped trillions of dollars off the value of stock markets in the United States, as well as in Asia and Europe. The S&P 500 and the Nasdaq had their worst days since 2022. Now, just time to tell you that shares of the Gucci owner Kering have fallen sharply today after the French luxury goods group reported a worse than expected fall in sales for the 3 months to June. It's also warned the rest of the year will be tough. Now, luxury brands are struggling with a slump in a key Chinese market and a cost of living crisis around the world. It has seen $250 billion wiped off Europe's top designer goods firms since March. That is your Business Today. We'll see you very soon. Bye-bye.
Welcome to BBC News and Verified Live. Let's turn to Ethiopia because heavy rains are again hampering the search operations after devastating landslides in remote parts of southern Ethiopia. More than 250 bodies have now been retrieved from the affected areas to the southwest of Addis Ababa. But the UN has already warned that the number of dead could double. Some 14,000 people are in need of urgent evacuation because of the risk of further landslides. Kalkadan Nibatel has sent this report from the scene. Let me just give you a quick pointer of a couple of things we're keeping an eye on. We're watching Kamala Harris in Texas, so we'll turn around and play you the best moments of that here on the programme in the next little while. Also, we'll be back live in Paris. Beautiful pictures coming in live from the French capital in the build-up to tomorrow's opening ceremony. Mariam Hashimi and our team are there to take us through all of the action today, the various sports that have already started. And do head to the website because full coverage there and details available to you. But a beautiful live picture stream coming into us from Paris. As I say, more here on BBC News. Now let's turn to a story that developed a couple of hours ago here in the UK because a man has been charged over the death of the grandmother, Esther Martin, who was killed by 2 XL bully dogs back in February. It's the first case of its kind since a ban on owning XL bullies came into force this year. Essex police say Ashley Warren has been charged with 4 offences over the incident, which happened at Jaywick in Essex. The 40-year-old is due to appear in court next month. We're heading to the top of the hour. We have more on all of our latest headline stories, the latest from Manchester, the latest from Washington. But let's pause and catch up with weather, and that's with Elizabeth. Live from London, this is BBC News. A lawyer for a man who was filmed being kicked in the head by a police officer at Manchester Airport says his condition has worsened.
I'm in Rochdale, where in the last hour and a half, a solicitor representing that man has said that he is suffering from a cyst on the brain.
The Prime Minister says he understands concern about the footage. We'll have the latest from politicians, including some who say the police should be commended.
Joe Biden tells the American public he dropped out of the US presidential race to save democracy.
We're at the White House, where the arrival of the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is imminent for talks with President Biden about that hoped-for ceasefire deal in Gaza.
I'm Marianne Moshiri in Paris, where the City of Love is gearing up to become the City of Sport. With the start of the Olympic Games, excitement is building, security is tight. I'll have the very latest ahead of tomorrow's opening ceremony.
Hello and welcome to Verified Live. Let's start with that fastly developing story here in the UK, where policing is under the spotlight after a video emerged of an officer kicking and appearing to stamp on a man's head as he lay on the floor at Manchester Airport. The region's police force has confirmed the suspension of one officer and that it's referred itself to the independent police watchdog. In the past hour, the lawyer for the two Rochdale men involved, who are brothers, has said the condition of the injured man has worsened. Around the world, across the UK, you're watching BBC News. Welcome back to BBC News. Let's talk about the Olympics for the next few minutes on the programme, because it's 100 years since Paris last staged the Summer Olympics, and while competition in the football, the rugby sevens, archery and handball are already underway, the official opening of the Games is a little over 24 hours away. We will have extensive coverage of that and the Games over the next few weeks, so let's head back to Paris and rejoin Mariam Moshiri, who's there for us. Mariam, over to you.
Matthew, thank you. Very warm welcome to Paris, one of the most beautiful cities in the world, arguably, and host to the 33rd Summer Olympics and Paralympics. Now, this event will be the biggest event ever organised in France, a plan that's been brought to life from the moment Paris was awarded the Games back in 2017. More from me throughout the day. Matthew, back to you.
Mariam, thanks so much. Let's end this half hour by showing you another live picture feed coming to us from Paris in the build-up to that Olympic opening ceremony. Welcome back to BBC News. Let's turn to our main headlines this half hour. A lawyer for a man who was filmed being kicked in the head by a police officer at Manchester Airport says his condition has now worsened. Joe Biden tells the American public he dropped out of the US presidential race to save democracy. Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is due to meet with Joe Biden at the White House a day after delivering that speech to Congress. New Met Office analysis has confirmed that climate change is dramatically increasing the frequency of extreme high temperatures and wet days here in the UK. And we're in Paris, where the first Olympic events have taken place ahead of tomorrow's opening ceremony. Well, all of that is coming up. Let's cross to catch up with all the sports headlines of the day. Hugh Ferris is waiting. And Hugh, good evening.
Hello to you, Matthew. Andy Murray admits he ran out of time after announcing that he is withdrawing from the singles event at the Paris Olympics, his final competition before retiring. There's 2 runs needed for Welsh Fire off 6 balls now, so they are heading for victory, as are Spain, who have got a goal in that game in the group stage of the women's Olympic football. They lead Japan by 2-1. You can follow it all on the website or indeed on the BBC throughout the next 2 and a bit weeks, Matthew.
Great stuff, Hugh. Thanks very much. Thank you. Let's return straight away to our top story. A lawyer for 2 men involved in that altercation with police at Manchester Airport says one has been found to have had a cyst now on the brain after his medical condition worsened. A video showing a police officer kicking and stamping on the head of the man as he lies prone on the floor. That, of course, has been circulated many times on social media. Greater Manchester Police says an officer has been suspended and the police watchdog has now begun an investigation. Well, let's talk more to our home editor, Mark Easton, who's here in the studio with me. And Mark, it's a pretty obvious observation, but a tremendous focus now on Greater Manchester Police after this. Mark Easton, thank you for taking us through all of that. Thank you. Well, let's turn to another breaking development in the last hour, because the US, the UK and South Korea have jointly accused North Korea of using a cyber espionage group to steal sensitive and classified data to advance Pyongyang's military and nuclear ambitions. Well, let's get the latest on that breaking story. Let's cross to our security correspondent in the newsroom, Gordon Carrera. And Gordon, tell us more. Well, we're nearly at the end of the programme. Let's close by just returning very briefly to Paris, show you the pictures there, because the red carpet's out, some of the arrivals for the Olympic dinner that they'll be holding there in the next little while. I'll show you also the live pictures of a beautiful shot of Paris that is coming into us. There it is, with the Eiffel Tower all lit up. On the other side, of course, you've got the Olympic hoops. It is a wonderful setting, so much work in the build-up in France to this opening ceremony, which you will see tomorrow. Some of the games and sports already starting there, as Mariam was taking us through. But Mariam will be more here with more from Paris a little later in the coming hours, and will take us through that opening ceremony here on the programme tomorrow. But those are the scenes there from Paris. We're coming to the end of today's Verified Live. So just time to say thank you for joining us, and hopefully I'll see you at the same time tomorrow. See you then. Bye-bye.
Hello there, good evening. The air still muggy and humid throughout today. Lots of